All right. Hey, Josh Dorfman visits us today to say, hey, what if the low carbon economy isn't about sacrifice, but the next $1 trillion growth engine? Josh, welcome to the Go for CO channel. How are you?
Awesome, John. Great to be with you.
Awesome, brother. Well, hey, look, this is a really cool topic. Obviously, many of us are unaware, as I just was off camera with you and talking about some of the things and innovation that you're a part of, which is pretty sick. And look, talking about it in a $1 trillion way can surprise some people, but hopefully it intrigues you, Go for Your community, to learn a little bit different of a different type of business today and what Josh has been able to do in founding these types of companies. So, Josh, give us a little bit of background of kind of were you a corporate guy, family entrepreneurship, or did you just think of it when you were 12 years old, like I want to be in this business, that type of thing? So, a little backstory, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I appreciate that. No, definitely not a corporate guy. In fact, grew up with entrepreneurial parents. The family business was was and is to this day a sleepaway camp in New Hampshire, a summer camp that my two great uncles started in 1948 called Camp Wall Whitman, inspired by a poem, not a bridge, um, and built this camp up in the White Mountains. The Appalachian Trail goes right through it. It's on a lake. And so my parents were running that business when I was a kid. So I was we were always around business building. It was just kind of in the DNA. My brother runs that today. And so I grew up in kind of in some respects, not a ton of pressure to go into that business, not a ton of pressure to go into business in general, but really with more of a liberal arts kind of background going through college. I came out of school and was thinking about a career, honestly, in State Department, maybe CIA. And so in the 1990s, I was like, I'm going to go to China because it was clear to me, it was a little bit, I think I was on the earlier side of seeing the future of the importance of China. But I thought, man, I'm going to go to China. I'm going to figure out how to get there. And so I got a job teaching English at the Nanjing University of Science and Technology and showed up in 1995. I got a part-time job working in a factory. I don't know if you've ever had a bike lock from a company called Kryptonite. When you were, when you were growing up, they invented the original U-shaped bike lock that everybody uses. Kryptonite opened their first factory 20 minutes from where I was teaching English. So suddenly I was in this factory part-time trying to do quality control with Chinese people who had never seen an American before. It was fascinating. And I went to work for Kryptonite full time in China. We opened more factories. 2 years into that experience, we opened a third factory in southern China, 1997. And we're going to this restaurant to celebrate the deal with the Chinese side. I'm with the owner of the Chinese factory. My Mandarin at this point is pretty good. And before we go into this restaurant where we're going to like toast in there, it's called Baijiu. It's basically like grain alcohol. And then we're going to mix it with a little bit of snake blood. Gross, but like that's like what we were doing in this little town. This guy's like, Josh, look, my Mercedes is the biggest Mercedes of all these Mercedes in the parking lot. It turned out all the cars were Mercedes because there's a lot of Hong Kong money in southern China, but still communist China, right? And I thought, like, holy moly, like, a couple of things at once hit me. I was like, right, you guys want what we want, which is more, bigger. You want a bigger car, bigger house, more stuff, higher quality of life. There's a billion of you. So that is like, that's an interesting number. And you're all riding bicycles. Nobody wants one. Everybody wants a car. And in the like limited time I've been here, when I was in Nanjing, which is a few hours from Shanghai, I saw a highway get built in like a year and a half, done from Nanjing to Shanghai, the whole thing. In America, that would take decades and you'd still be jackhammering, right? So it's like, there's gonna be a billion cars here. I don't know anything about climate change, but how does that pencil when there's a billion more cars in China and everyone's trying to do what we do in America, raise our standard of living? So my MO has always been, how do we continue to increase our standard of living, increase our quality of life, enable people to do that not just in China, but in Eastern Europe and India and all over the world in a way that is compatible with the Earth's capabilities to sustain that type of growth? And how do we enable future generations to have that same opportunity? And that's what really led me into the business world.
Hmm. That's an incredible experience, right? Especially putting yourself from New Hampshire to China. I mean, that's like two worlds apart, right? And what an experience to immerse yourself into something that then became kind of the lifeblood of where your entrepreneurship, really blossomed, it seemed like, and really nourished itself through the teachings that you were, you know, collaborating with and those types of things. And I think a lot of people don't realize, if you place yourself out of your normal circumstances, your normal, environment, and put yourself somewhere else, the breath of light and the growth that you'll have. So that's a really encouraging story. So then you get involved with this company, you start seeing the ability to help them. You have this celebratory and then wismic, like boom, knowledge day, right? Like idea that comes up and thinks that, oh, wow, okay, I can make some differences in the world here. So, what are your next steps? I mean, does this transform you into coming back to the States, or does this give you some energy to then start your own thing, or do you continue with the journey that you were in within that company?
Well, so I didn't have a business background as I'm describing. And so I also with Kryptonite, with this particular company, I was the chief representative officer. I'm 23 years old. I'm representing this company now in mainland China. And we're working on opening bicycle lock distribution, selling into this market with 1 billion bicycles. I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm gonna retire by like the time I'm 28 years old. Like this is it. And then it slowly dawned on me that like, oh right, if the bicycle lock is more expensive than the bike, right? Because this isn't like America with with your like Trek, mountain bike or whatever. It's like, yeah, that's gonna be a problem. Maybe I should go to business school. So I ended up leaving China, came back, got my MBA from a school called Thunderbird, which is out in Arizona. It's now part of Arizona State University that focuses on business, uh, cross-cultural, like international business skills and language. So it was a good fit for me. But I also came back now wanting to understand more about climate change. And I didn't just land on this idea of like, oh, I'm going to go start businesses that make a lot of money and help cut carbon. I actually went through this phase as I got educated on what was happening on climate change. I got very concerned. I got very afraid. I kind of took on the sort of activist energy, which was like
Mm.
kind of a scolding energy where I would say to like, you know, or I'd come home for Thanksgiving and my younger brother would be like, "Oh, great, here he is again. Here comes Josh to make us all feel bad," And I was like, "I don't want to be that guy, I like that's not who I want to be." It just took me a while to think through, like, how could I take this feeling? I've seen the future. I was presented with this gift in China. I was shown the future. Now I understand this issue around climate change, and how do I like merge these worlds? And I like business. Is there a way to use business as a tool to affect positive change? It took me a while to get there, but in 2004, I started my first company. It was called Vivavi, or like Viva V, which was this. I had this idea of like, I'm going to pull together this collection of the best designed, most stylish, most good looking products I can find made from eco-friendly materials. Maybe they're recycled. Maybe it's billboards that are like now turned into like messenger bags. That was a company called Roland. Or maybe it's these really cool shelves that are made from like recycled cardboard. There's a company called Reader Design. I was importing the stuff from Sweden. I just pulled together this like eclectic mix of stuff that honestly like nobody really wanted, but I was really into this idea. I ended up moving the company to Brooklyn, and we became a modern design furniture company, using all sustainable materials, and that actually started to get a lot of traction. That was in early 2005.
Mm. All right. So look, you went back for something that you thought found fundamentally, right, laid a foundation, right, on the education side, but then you were so intrigued and so moved by something that it created a movement inside you, right? Which is kind of nice because I think a lot of times from a go for CO mindset, right, like you've got to find something, some purpose, some way, some vision, right, that enables you to act forward and move forward. And even if you trip and you stumble and like you said, maybe piss some people off or agitated people because of this conviction, you found your way then, through the ups and downs of that. So you're in Brooklyn. Tell us, I mean, I guess, you started multiple companies, it sounds like, and, you've been in this energy conservation, carbon footprint space. There is some, headwinds against it and in certain administrations and some headwinds for wins behind it with other administrations. How have you in that story? I don't want to block or stop the story or minimize it, but so you're in Brooklyn and you keep going. So what does that look like, and what's part of that journey to develop the next business?
Yeah, it was actually a really fascinating moment because one of the places I had gone was to Washington D.C. as I was thinking, trying to process, John, all of this information, all of this, and my sense of identity was changing. My sense of worldview was changing. I was really like, climate was becoming very paramount for me. I'd been in China. I was trying to think about where the world was going. So I went into a PhD program at George Washington University right before I started this company, Vivavi. And I thought, I'm going to study China. I'm going to study environment. I'm going to study politics. If I ever want to be like a real life Jack Ryan, like now's the time, And then I was like in this program, and I was like, my brain does not operate at a PhD level. This is not the right fit. And I left and started my first company. But so I'm in DC. And then I'm thinking now, as I'm really interested in design, right, and trying to use design as this lever to affect environmental change, DC was a terrible place, right? Because DC is like, there was no style in DC. No one, there was just like fish out of water, right? So I was like, I got to get out of here. I got to go to Brooklyn. That's where the best designers are. I had one employee at the time, and she was not making the trip with me to Brooklyn, or she was not going to move with the company. And this young woman, Lucy, was very committed to the cause, the environmental cause. And so we made a deal, though. I said, look, if you help me pack up this office, we're working on my apartment, and pack up all my stuff, load it into the van, and take the van with me up to New York. That with the van we take to trade shows and stuff. I'll give you the van as like a parting gift because I don't need it. I'm in Brooklyn now. And she was like, cool, I'll do that. So she does it. It's the last day. We're on the New Jersey Turnpike. It's like 10:30 at night. Been a really long day. And Lucy is in the passenger seat, seemingly having a panic attack. She's like, I'm like, geez, I'm like, Lucy, are you all right? And finally, she's like, Josh, look, I have to ask you something. I have to get this off my chest. I couldn't ask you when you were my boss, but you're not my boss anymore. Like, there's something I really need to know. And so I was single at the time, and I was like, oh my God, she's attracted to me. She's been keeping this in, right? So I get nervous, but finally, like, I get her to say what's on her mind. She's like, all right, look, I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but are you really an environmentalist? And I'm like, what? She's like, I mean, you're always in the shower. You barely recycle. You were going to throw your bed out. I'm the one who took it to this homeless shelter. You don't, like, you're just this giant hypocrite. And I've been working for you for a year and a half, and I don't understand you. And like, she was furious with me. No attraction,
Huh.
like furious. So slept on the couch, took the van. I didn't see her again. I actually have never seen her again, but we've gotten back in touch. But she was right, And so this is what happened when I got to New York. I wrote a blog. I was blogging a lot already, and I wrote a little blog, and I was like, I'm just going to own this for a bunch of. I need to own. She's right. I need to own this hypocrisy. I need to think it through. And I wrote a little blog entry on my website I called it the Lazy Environmentalist. And I was like, I'm just going to own this thing because I'm the CEO. I run this company. I need to be authentic and transparent with like our very small customer base. Um, I do my best thinking in the shower. So I take long showers. I know I'm using a lot of water. I know I'm using a lot of heat to, energy. I'm not going to take a long shower as much as I care about the planet. Because so what I really would prefer to have is a low flow shower head with amazing water pressure that solves this problem for me. I want an Audi TT convertible. I don't care if it's electric or hydrogen, a biodiesel or some, green technology. If I can afford it and when it's what I want, I'll get it. If it's not, if if not, like, I'm not going to do it. I want to do the right thing for the planet, but only if it fits my life. I care, but I'm lazy. I need convenience. I'm a lazy environmentalist. I think there's millions of Americans who feel like I do. And I wrote it. I didn't really think about it too much once I published it, but I was like, I owe this to my customers so they know who the CEO of this company, how he thinks. A couple of weeks later, a radio producer calls me up. He's like, hey, I read your blog. I'm like, how did you possibly find my blog? He's like, but 2004, 2005, there were like 10 blogs. So it was probably, odds were a little higher than they are now. He's like, let's turn this into a radio show. And it was for this channel online. It's called Voice America. It still exists, voiceamerica.com. I was like, yeah, I'll give it a try. And so I actually started The Lazy Environmentalist as a radio show, broadcasting from my closet in Brooklyn, it's the quietest place in my apartment. And then I got an intro to Sirius XM, and I moved the show to Sirius XM. This is 2006. And then I wrote a book, and I got the book sold. And then my show went live every day in 2007. And I went on the Martha Stewart show for Earth Day. I was her Earth Day guest just as my book
Hmm.
was coming out. And I didn't bomb. I was like, okay. And then Britta, the water pitcher company was like, "Hey, we're doing this big campaign. We're going to pair a Brita water pitcher with an Nalgene reusable water bottle, get rid of disposable bottled water. We want you to be the spokesperson." I was like, "Awesome!" So now I'm doing more TV, and then Sundance Channel, Robert Redford's channel calls, and they're like, "Let's make this a reality TV show. Go have lunch with this guy, Dave Metzler, who created the original Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. We do a lot of work with him.
Mhm.
I have lunch with Dave, and I'm like, do you really want to like do a show?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, it's like my show, like I'm the star. And he's like, "Yeah, come out to LA. Let's film a pilot." And so I did 2 seasons of this reality TV show. That's what happened. The Lazy Environmentalist happened when I got to New York.
Wow, what an explosion of opportunity, right? So, it's interesting. You put yourself in an environment where you already, well, I guess you reflected on the authenticity that she shared, right? And it was a vulnerable moment for both of you. She didn't know if she should share. You didn't know what she was going to say, right? You thought it was a personal thing, and it turned out to be very personal to who you were and what you were about, and kind of transformed you, right? So it's a cool moment. I mean, I think all of us, have those moments that maybe sometimes we don't catch, right? A good mentor of mine says things are caught, not taught, right? And you caught it in that moment that you had kind of been a hypocrite for what you believed in, right? And the way that you were acting. But man, what about the momentum that happened after that and that blog? Then these next steps happened. So then that company you were doing, just to kind of go back a little bit, what were they providing as a service? And then ultimately, this transformation, this new openness created a brand in and of itself, you, the person, right? But what was the company doing as far as some of the services?
That's exactly right. So then I was running 2 companies because I was still running Vivavi, this retail company, and
Hmm.
that I was morphing into a furniture company. And what I ended up doing with Vivavi was I had this pretty big apartment in Greenpoint in Brooklyn, this up and coming neighborhood, just on the outskirts of Williamsburg, which was like the center of like hipsterville, in like the universe. And my roommate moved out, and I thought, no, you know what? I can't afford a showroom here in New York City. That's way too expensive. But I'm going to turn my apartment into a furniture showroom. So I emailed all of these furniture designers all over the country, and I was like, "Hey, I've got really good news. We're opening a New York City showroom. I'm going to need you to consign me a bed, a couple couches, dining table, furnish my place." And then I lived in my furniture store for 4 years. Like I was like so committed, John, to these values and what I was trying to do in the world. I lived like people would, I'd go off to Manhattan, take the subway, do the radio show, come back. There'd be people in my apartment. I had a saleswoman. And one day she took me aside. She's like, "Josh, look, I love the mission. I love what we're doing. This is gonna be so big one day. But if you want me to sell your furniture, you need to make your bed." And I'm like, "Totally fair." Like, yeah, you're so so we're doing that. And then the Lazy Environmentalist really just became this like its own media company where it was, so yeah, it was books, we had a TV show, radio show. The business model was a lot of speaking engagements based on building that brand and that platform, as you pointed out. And it had a really good run. If you remember in 2006, that's when Al Gore's movie An Inconvenient Truth came out. And that suddenly changed. It certainly made the culture more aware and understanding of climate change. The media, whether it's Esquire or GQ or Vogue or Vanity Fair, whomever, wanted to tell this green story. Well, how do they tell a story? They tell a story through products, right? Hey, here's this green cushion. Here's this other eco-friendly thing. Well, I was like, I had the best product company, and then I had this radio show where I was talking to like the best designers. So it was right place, right time, really good timing. I think I was probably decent at hosting a show, probably decent at being a spokesperson, but I was in a pretty unique position, and I just had a lot of opportunity come my way.
Well, and you jumped in, right? You didn't stop yourself. You didn't question it in a way. I mean, maybe internally you were questioning some things like, am I good enough or anything? But ultimately you took the steps, you assessed where you're at, you took alignment with the people that were coming at you that you were aligned with, right? You took accountability. So I'm selfishly sharing the 4A formula, right? It really aligns with the way that I wrote the book. And I love those steps that people have to take. And sometimes you don't recognize it. Me writing the book for 2.5 years, I didn't even know that I was doing that in my life until I really wrote the book. And I can see it now when I talk to people. of how they assess things, but then take action ultimately at the end, right? So really, really cool stuff. So ultimately, all right, now you have the brand, you've built up the popularity, you're schmoozing with the right people, you're connected, right? Vivavi, does it ultimately get sold at one point, or because of this personal brand and media company that you built, it kind of just, did its own thing, or did you have other people run it? And then where did we transition into Supercool and some of the things that you're doing nowadays?
Yeah. So Vivavi, the challenge always for that business was, and I think this has been a challenge for consumer businesses that have these sustainable values, it was just hard for us to find our market. I thought we did something really smart in 2008. There were luxury green condo buildings going up in Manhattan and elsewhere around the country. We furnished an apartment, a model apartment unit in this luxury condo building where Leonardo DiCaprio had bought a building. They gave us the space for free. We said we'd furnish it and we would manage it. So suddenly we actually had a showroom. And that was really good for business. And I thought, wow, okay, we just found the replicable model to actually you know, go to market and really find our customer, because I can go open these showrooms in Dallas where the green building goes up. I don't need to reach everybody in Dallas. I just need to reach people who want to live in this luxury green condo building and sell them our furniture. And so we were building that model. Then the financial crisis hit, which was brutal for a business like ours, for a company selling home furniture. So really, I had no choice but to shut the business down. I mean, we just, our business went away. Thankfully, that was still at a moment as I was scaling into and scaling up the Lazy Environmentalist, and that was, Vivavi was starting to really hurt just as I was actually getting my TV show. Um, as we went through that phase of doing a pilot, getting it green lighted and moving into production, and I was spending more time in LA. So it was a tricky moment. But yeah, so then Lazy Environmentals had its run. And when that ended up in 2010, when we did 2 seasons, we didn't get a third season. It was a very good run. What I felt at that moment, I was exhausted. I was burnt out as a entrepreneur. I just felt I didn't have the energy. I didn't want to stay in LA. I didn't want to become a TV person. I didn't have any ideas to start a new company. And friends of mine and some mentors whose opinions was leaning into said, look, like, just go back into the startup world. Go learn on someone else's dime. Go help someone with marketing or communication things you're good at. And that's what I did. I went to San Francisco, worked for a startup. And I did that for a number of years. Eventually in 2018, to kind of bring it forward to what I do today, I decided to start another furniture company. I was living in North Carolina. North Carolina is historically the furniture capital, manufacturing capital of the United States, if not the world. And I set up this kind of design brief in my head of what I wanted to accomplish. I wanted to make furniture in America that had beautiful design at attractive price points that was all sustainable. So like you could afford it and there was no compromise. And we did it. The challenge was, to me, we were still cutting down trees for the material. And that really bugged me. I mean, it was a plywood, it was considered responsibly harvested, it was FSC certified, had all the labels attached to it. But I just thought, man, in the 21st century, can't we do better than like the best thing to make a table out of that's really beautiful is like a tree? Can't we do something else? And in that moment, as I was kind of processing that, and through COVID, I was introduced to an entrepreneur who had moved to North Carolina, lived on the other side of the state down in Raleigh, Durham. I was up in the mountains in Asheville. And we get on the phone and we just immediately hit it off. And I'm venting about material. And he says, well, what would you do? I'm like, I don't know. There's got to be something like better, more sustainable. Maybe hemp. I don't know. I don't know anything about hemp, but maybe hemp, maybe bamboo. It's got to be something. And this guy, who I don't know from Adam, is like, oh, I have 6 giant trash bags of hemp in my garage. And so now my head spins. I'm like, wait, who are you exactly? Like, what's, and he's like, well, I just moved here. I spent 8 years in Los Angeles working for SpaceX. I was in charge of keeping astronauts alive on the Dragon spacecraft. I ran the life support systems team. And
Hmm.
I was like, and now you live in North Carolina? He was like, I do. And so we quickly kind of combined around 2 ideas. One was, could we develop more sustainable materials? And two, because Elon Musk was already thinking a lot about this, so SpaceXers were thinking a lot about this. How do we remove carbon from the atmosphere, right? When we think about climate change, we have a problem with climate change because we burn fossil fuels. It's like not so bad. It doesn't. It's burning fossil fuels isn't the issue. It's the issue that when you burn fossil fuels, all this carbon dioxide goes up in the atmosphere, traps greenhouse gas, right? It's greenhouse gases, traps heat in, and planet warms up. So, SpaceXers are like the problem. Like carbon dioxide is not inherently bad. There's nothing wrong with carbon. It's just in the wrong place. It's in the
Mm,
atmosphere.
mm,
And if we can go get it, it's actually free and you can build a lot of things out of carbon. In fact, carbon is like one of right the ultimate um all life is like built on carbon. So it was like this really interesting SpaceX thinking. And so we thought, well, what if we could find something that grows 10 times faster than trees? Keep trees in the ground, right? Because like we love trees, but pull carbon from the atmosphere through photosynthesis, just with something that's going to grow a lot faster, just like trees do. And then turn it into whatever trees get turned into, which is timber, which gets turned into building materials. What if we build a building material company? So I did, and we built this company called Planted. That's exactly what Planted does. We make building materials out of, instead of trees, this really fast growing grass. It does grow like 10 times faster than trees. It gets 20 feet tall in a single season. So instead of waiting 20 years for a tree to grow, to cut it down, turn it into a panel to build a house. And we built a
mm,
factory that, unlike the rest of the industry, which has these giant smokestacks on it, and the reason why they have giant smokestacks is because a tree, when you cut it down, is 50% water by weight. And so you have to actually get the water out. So you got to burn some stuff to get the water out so you can actually make your panels in the factory. And that's putting a lot of carbon back into the atmosphere, right? So we were like, what if we just change the whole process? Pull carbon faster from the atmosphere and then build a factory that has no smokestacks. That's all electric. Just plug it in and we shrink it down so we can make it a lot cheaper than a $400 million mill and we can put it anywhere. And so that's essentially what we do. And out the other end of our 140, 150-foot line comes a 4-foot 8 by panel. Looks exactly the same as what builders use today, except ours is made from grass. And when you put it in a home, you're locking away all that carbon that we've taken from the atmosphere. You're actually locking away in homes. So now homes are actually part of the solution, not the problem, because now they're actually places where we can store a lot of carbon that was formerly in the atmosphere. That's what Planted does. So that's what I did.
all right. I'm a numbers guy, so that it just blew me away. Like, really interesting. Now, is there any, just, I mean, out of a novice question, is there anything that, I don't know, radiates or, like, you go out to the grass and radon, nobody ever
Oh.
thinks of it in your backyard. But unfortunately, like our dogs and, things that we love in ourselves, maybe laying in it and you don't even realize this is a real thing, but it's kind of just never talked about and stuff like that. But so does, is there anything that comes off of that new panel that you just created in a energy sense or anything, or am I completely off on that?
No, I mean that does kind of resonate for me because you still have to wonder, like, okay, well, what's in the soil, what's in the plants, what we had to study all of that. It turns out it's perfectly inert in terms of some of the the issues that you're talking about. As
Mm,
it happens, though, the way that we're actually able to what we would say it's called stranding, but like slice this grass, or let just like a giant mill would like chip a tree to like, to
mm,
get into smaller pieces, create a board. Um, we can slice our fiber way thinner and still keep the structural integrity of it than you can with a tree. So we can compress more fiber into that, um, 5 inch, 5/8 inch thick panel that's going to go on your wall. It is stronger. It's more resistant to moisture, which actually is the thing that builders care about. So there are some benefits to the
mm.
way that not just what we grow, but the machines we invented to actually then take that and turn it into a form that we can press into a board.
Interesting. So that current business, is it service the building industry then? Is it is it replacing drywall? Am I right on that? Or just the frame side of things? Or
For now, it's really in the framing. So when you see a new
okay.
house going up and you see the 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 2 by 4s, right? The sticks, so to
Hmm.
speak, and then you start to see those 4 foot by 8 foot panels being nailed to those sticks. So that's
Mm,
really that's the structure of the
that's the
house,
reply.
right?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's right. So it's the drywall will then go on the outside or inside rather of that. So the sheathing is what's inside the walls, what enables a house basically to stand up. That's the material we build. That's the hardest stuff to build. If it's
Mm,
to have structural integrity, and it's really hard to get builders to commit to a new material. So we have a strategic relationship. We've been really fortunate and we've cultivated it now over probably close to 4 years with the largest home builder in the country, a company called DR Horton. They build one
Hmm.
in every seven homes in America, about 100,000 homes a year. So we've gone through a development cycle with them. We've put our panels on a roof of a DR Horton home in Durham, North Carolina. In at the tail end of 2024, we got an order from DR Horton for 10 million of our panels. I mean, that's significant
Hmm.
scale that enables us to really move forward and bring this product to market and introduce it, and then over time start to work with other builders and move into other industries too, potentially like furniture manufacturing, where our our panels will have applications, and even beyond. It's really a great starting point for us to build this company. So it's not like you're going to go to Home Depot today or tomorrow and be able to say, "Oh, I'd like a planted board, please." That's going to take some time, but we're bringing
Hmm.
it to market through residential developments with D.R. Horton, and then we will continue to grow this business over time.
And does that lead to some sort of, again, certification or brand awareness? Like, hey, people are going to be like, oh, does the builder get some sort of cost savings? Like, what's the motivation behind it? Is it an ROI thing, or is it more of a kind of sustainable, hey, this is great for the environment messaging, part of the marketing?
Well, so this brings us right back to the opening of the show because it's not about sustainable messaging. Builders don't buy sustainable messaging. What
Hmm.
builders really care about, and where we outperform the legacy incumbents in the products that exist today, is on moisture resistance. And
Mm.
so we offer them a product that solves serious headaches for them on a job site. And so we've really leaned into understanding, okay, what is it that we need to be able to do to be able to sell this product effectively where builders will adopt it? And so we know that we have to outperform on the things they care about most. And then we also know that we have to build our product, with that said, so that it performs on the job site, it functions on the job site, installs exactly the same way as the products they use today. So that uh, someone who's actually working on that job site building a house may not even know they're building a house out of grass instead of trees. And so that meant we have to do all the R&D work, all the product development work to make sure that this panel has the same exact density as engineered wood panels, because you got to put a nail through it in the exact same way. It has to have the same feel, right? You can't slow anybody down. And I think we've done a very good job of that, where other companies that have tried to bring alternative type, more environmentally friendly things to market tend to ask builders to meet them halfway, or like, here's how you would use it. And we were like, no, we know if we're going to really try and, compete in the biggest, most built out, sophisticated markets with really sophisticated manufacturers and then a giant commodity market, we have to play by that market's rules. We have to be this drop in replacement and make it as easy as possible for a builder to say yes, recognizing that there's just going to be so many hurdles to get to that yes. We have to remove as much friction from the process that we can possibly control to get to
Mm.
yes.
No, that's product innovation. I mean, there's innovative sense to that, but then, like you said, I love that you said, right, hey, you're not trying to necessarily disrupt that industry. You're really locking arms with them and saying, hey, this is a replacement of something that you currently do, changes nothing, but it also gives you these 10 other benefits, right? And ultimately benefits sell more than features, right? So really, really interesting stuff. So all the time, and this will be my commercial banker hat. I'm just wondering, like, all right, he gets into business with a partner from SpaceX, and you guys have these innovative ideas, and you've been this world traveler from China to Arizona State, back to Brooklyn and like, but now you get a guy that you just meet. So what is like who do you guys look for investors? Was this something that I think you said it's about 5 years old, so you're just starting to kind of get your legs, like most businesses, the first 3 to 5 years are challenging, and especially in a space like yours where you really have to break into an industry and be something different that doesn't change their way they do things. What was your model of investment? Are you guys pre-seed? Are you guys going for Series A? Are you, privately held, bootstrapped? What's kind of been that scenario for you guys?
we founded the company. We formally incorporated the company in early May 2021. And then we went out to raise a seed round, which
Mhm.
took some learning, some ups and downs, took
Mhm.
a whole bunch of no's, just, you know, like everybody else. We heard a lot of rejection before we heard any yeses and started getting some checks. So by the end of 2021, we raised a $2 million seed round. The our core anchor, one of our core anchors in that seed round is this guy, Biz Stone, who is very well known in Silicon Valley. He was a co-founder of Twitter. I think he helped co-found Medium. He's been the board chair of Beyond Meat. I mean, he's just, he's a legend in Silicon Valley. And the way we got to him is we were struggling to get investors and explain our crazy idea was we were posting a lot on LinkedIn, and I posted this sledgehammer test that the guys had done where we had these small samples in 2021, maybe like 8 inches wide. But we did the sledgehammer test where it looked like a panel, where in slow motion you could see a sledgehammer come down and bounce off our panel and then just cut right through, and destroy the oriented strand board legacy product. And it just
Mhm.
went viral. I mean, it just went everywhere. And this woman who had been a guest on my Lazy Environmentalist radio show years before, who had had an eco-friendly clothing line in New York City, reached out to me. She's like, "Hey, this is so interesting. I think my boss might be interested." And her current boss was Biz Stone. So Biz Stone was like, "Oh yeah, this is really interesting. This is like civilizational change that you guys are going for. I get it. I'm gonna write you a check." And once we got Biz, then I think, as you know, we were vouched for, and then there's some FOMO,
Sure.
and then we were able to work some dynamics. So we got the $2 million round done in Series A. Excuse me, $2 million round done in 2021. 2022, we turned around, hit some milestones, and were able to raise a $10 million Series A. And so, we had the business capitalized kind of through those early years. Just this past year, 2025, we raised a $22 million Series B. So we've been able to keep the company capitalized as we move through our milestones and really start to build out our commercialization path to market.
Yeah, and obviously having gotten in with DR Horton and starting to see kind of their transition, right, of using legacy products to your products, the volume that they do, right? If you can get 10% at beginning and then 20% and then start to creep up in their vendor side of things, right? It really becomes something impactful. Are you guys also looking at, other big ones like Lennar or Pulte, or do you have some sort of maybe exclusivity? Are they saying, hey, we don't want you to go to our competition? What's kind of the dynamic of that relationship?
The dynamic has been so empowering for us. And so, of course, we're coming to market with DR. They want us to be as successful as we can possibly be broadly, because they also want to make sure that we are getting to economies of scale, right? That we're able to fulfill what we're trying to do. And we talk to everyone in the industry. We talk to everyone in the furniture industry. We're talking to companies building data centers right now. I mean, wherever there's an application for what we're doing, of course, we're starting to have those conversations. The 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 opportunity is massive. The challenge for us is to continue to prove it out and just continue to execute. So, we'll see where that goes. I think it's something where over time, can we become, continue to be trusted, credible, do what we say we're going to do, deliver. And I think those opportunities really expand. DR has been really just an amazing partner for us, because they've been I think this is what you need to do when you're trying to help bring innovation to market. They've been in the fields with us. They've seen how this grass grows. They see how this grass harvests. They've seen our greenhouses. They've seen our entire operation. Like I said, we've built model homes together. They've seen they've seen us be able to grow and get to all the certifications we need. And so that is, it's building trust over a lot of time that we can do what we're going to do. They've been amazing at doing what they've said they're going to do. And so I think that when you're trying to bring, especially a new material to market, it's very difficult to do that if you're doing blocking and tackling the way I think of it, or like the hand-to-hand combat of trying to go to one small builder after another small builder, and right, because you'll die, it's death by a thousand cuts if you're a startup. So it's definitely working out for us.
No, and I could think, there's certainly some ugly parts, right, of the competition starting to say, hey, these guys are getting market share. Who is this little planted? Like, who are these guys, right? The 84 Lumbers of the world. And I'm very minimal into that space with my commercial banking side. But I wonder, have you thought about any potential behemoths that are in that space that are much bigger than you guys? Is there a competitive nature that you want to just take market share, or is there a possibility of even adapting and becoming, a part of their supply chain or anything like that? Or is it you guys are going to stay pretty focused on your lane?
Well, I mean, I think you have to look at it through two lenses. We certainly see ourselves as the disruptor, right? We certainly, and that's how we recruit. That's how we build the team that wants to come really drive change, right? Like people go to SpaceX because it's not necessarily because they love Elon, but they want it, but they love space and they want to go to Mars, right? And they also want to go, like they want to go to Mars, right? So, you know, we're driving a vision and a mission to attract the kind of people who want to see, not just this industry change, but really want to drive transformational change for civilization. So that says, like, we have a lane, we're going to go execute down our lane. At the same time, yeah, we talk to everybody, right? Like what that ultimate strategy looks like. It doesn't have to be set in stone. It doesn't have to be just one thing to get there. I think that's actually also, today, I mean, I think that's what continues to make us able to grow. So I came back to the company as the fractional chief marketing officer in January. Nathan, who is one of the co-founders, also who came from SpaceX, has stepped in over the last couple of years as CEO. He's absolutely the right fit to be leading the company. He's an awesome leader, great visionary. We continue to put people into the right seats for this company to succeed. It's not about ego, but it's definitely about mission. So I don't know if I'd say we're going to stay in our lane, but we're certainly going to keep that energy of we are the disruptor, and we see a lot in this industry that's just flat out wrong. Like if you were starting this industry today, you just wouldn't do it the way the industry has grown up and now has solidified in the way it operates. You would definitely do it differently. We feel like you would do planted. And so we're not going to do anything that deviates us from our mission, but we'll stay open to what enables us to fulfill our mission in the fastest, most profitable way.
And just to clarify, the am I wrong in saying, or please add to it, the true mission that started from this was how to take that carbon in this stuck space, right, and bring it down to a usable product that becomes something which became planted. That's truly it, right?
That's exactly it. I mean,
Okay.
that is exactly it. So it's
Okay.
like, how many hoops
Now,
do we have to go through? How much
uh,
operations do we have to build? How much do we have to go get end customers so we can keep planting more grass, so we can pull more carbon from the atmosphere and keep this cycle going, right?
okay.
That's what drives us. That's what drives the founders. That's what drives a
Sure.
lot of people we recruit, but that's not
Yeah.
what we sell to customers.
No, no, sure. I mean, I think, it's interesting, right? Because I had a lady on that, trying to think of it now off the top of it. But anyway, it was something about how leadership, it's culture. I just had her on like 2 months ago. But anyway, the vision of that is always very interesting because you're trying to say, hey, this affects the world, right? But is there anything measurable that you could say? Like, is there any data that's coming out that's saying, hey, you guys are reducing it by, I don't know, zero point zero 0.03 or 0.95 or 1.6, like carbon coming out of the, like, is there something there that could also then magnify the story in that way, or am I lost on that?
Well, for us at this point, it's about how much carbon can we sequester in a panel? How much carbon can we
Mhm.
lock away in a house, right? What is your house doing versus what it, would- it what does a planted house do versus,
Mhm.
the status quo? So how do you make it tangible for someone to think about, okay, what's the impact if I were to do this? Every climate company tends to think in terms of gigatons of carbon. I think I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but I think roughly in any given year today, give or take, the world is emitting about 50 gigatons of carbon into the atmosphere. So just
Mm-hmm.
suffice to say, a lot. And so climate tech startups tend to have as their North Star, can our solution become a solution that is at gigaton scale carbon removal or carbon reduction, right? That
Mm-hmm.
tends to be the objective that people are aiming for. No one's gotten there, but we would roughly say the same thing, right? Let's think
Mm-hmm.
about that's what scale means. That's the ultimate ambition. That is a multi-decade, type endeavor that doesn't happen overnight. But I think that's for the most ambitious climate tech startups, that's what they're trying to hit.
No, and it's interesting to learn, right? Go for SEO community. Like if you've been listening to the last 5, 10 minutes, I mean, you've got to be thinking to yourself, oh, wow, this is so interesting. I mean, obviously the movement that electric vehicles have, created, there's some back end stuff of saying, well, is it really saving time? Yeah, your gas, bill as far as gasoline and not stopping somewhere, but how much are you not using in energy from your home that you're having to do? So there's a lot of still things. There's things to kind of push through, fight through, learn from, all that type of stuff, and it's really cool. And all the same, like I don't want to miss too, and we'll give it a couple minutes here. Super cool. So is super cool also helping Planted, or is that yet another separate kind of media company that you have?
So when I stepped down as CEO in 2024, I ended up launching Supercool. And Supercool is basically like take the story of Planted, but take companies that are even further along than Planted in terms of
Hmm.
their ability to be in market with solutions that are cutting carbon, helping their customers make more money, or save money, and helping their customers get a better experience too. What I found when I left Planted and I looked around 2 years ago, I just thought, holy moly, there's 2,000 companies in the last decade that have raised Series B, venture capital or beyond, growth stage capital, climate
Hmm.
tech. A lot of them went out of business anyway, but a lot of them succeeded. So you've got
Hmm.
companies that are, AI solutions for buildings that are cutting, cloud-based that are cutting HVAC by up to 25% because, right, they know this is a company called Brainbox that knows with 90+% certainty who's going to be occupying like an office floor it's with 6 hours from now, and then they know the wind speed around the building and the sun angle and the carbon intensity of the grid and the price at any given moment. So they use all those variables in AI to decide when is the optimal time to heat or cool that space so
Hmm.
you don't spike energy, right? And you get this amazing reduction in cost, right? And you get this amazing reduction in carbon. It's in 17,000 buildings. And then Train Technologies bought them because like it works, right? And then this company called Zoom, ZUM, that basically solved a huge chronic issue in America, which is in most major school districts. I'm not sure how it is in Chicago, but in most major school districts, kids do the right thing. They take the bus to go to school, and they still get to school late. Like that's ridiculous, but it's everywhere. And so Zoom was like, huh, what if we use some AI and we optimize those bus routes? And then we actually put some, GPS and other like basic tech on it so the transportation director and the parents actually know where the bus is because it's like 2026. We should know where the bus is, right? Like nobody knew until recently where it was. And if, you know, Timmy's not going to school today, the parents can open the app, be like, Timmy's not coming, the bus reroutes, not sitting there for 3 minutes idling and wasting diesel, right? So now Zoom is in 4,000 schools, almost many, many major school districts from Boston to Richmond to Dallas to LA. In Oakland, California, Zoom got all the kids to school on time and then went back to the transportation director and the city and said, look, this city has 136 school buses. We just optimized the system. Everyone's getting to school on time now, and you only need 74 school buses. So what we're going to do is we're going to go buy you 74 electric school buses. And the way that we're actually going to be able to help finance this is those school buses have huge batteries. So once they're charged up, and if they're not running to take kids to or from school, we're going to like sell that energy back to the grid. Like we're going to be a power provider, and we're going to get paid for that too, right? All this stuff's happening, right? It's like amazing, and no one's really talking about it. So I started Super Cool to talk about it.
Okay, I love it. Look, I mean, admittedly, um, I'm definitely a capitalist. I look at things from a perspective of, hey, how could you create momentum into something, right? Writing the book gave me 2.5 years of kind of taking a deep dive into myself and understanding, how the way I operate. But man, 400 of these interviews over the last few years has given me a perspective of different areas. Like I said, the culture lady, yourself now. And this is the cool part of podcasting. I think there's no way in heck that I could have met you just, I mean, maybe randomly, like you met the SpaceX guy and you guys really connected. But how cool is it that this medium, this space, will now for my listeners and for my tribe and for my community, start to say, oh, wow, planted. They may look at it. I need to be at a DR Horton built house based on them using planted as an example, right? So, and it could change just one more house being, built that way, and it all kind of creates an ecosystem of growth and stuff. So really, really cool. So look, we usually end our podcast with CEO, right? So client experience, engagement, and operational excellence. And I'll walk you through these and think of it from a value proposition, right? For Planted or for Supercool, and I'm assuming, being you being one of the leaders or founders, it may be similar, but both businesses are different. So when you think about client experience, what you want someone to experience coming to Planted or Super Cool, what might be that message? 30 to 60 seconds.
Let's stay on planted. If I think client experience for us, so, which is really customer experience for us, and someone's coming to planted, I want them to think I want them to think inevitability. Right? I want them to walk into our facility, meet our team, see our production floor, see our product, be around us, and think there is no question these guys are going to succeed. I want them to think that even more than necessarily saying, I must have this product right now, right? I want that. That's what we're trying to impress into the market, that this is coming. And so we really think a lot about, how do we not just have the leaders of the company be present, but how do we actually bring the company forward for our customers or clients so they get a feel for us more holistically and really have that sense and buy-in? Because what we're trying to do is build a long-term relationship. It's not about, can I sell you 100 panels tomorrow or 1,000 panels in 6 months? It's like, I want to sell you 100,000 panels. I want to sell you 1,000,000 panels every year. And so
Mhm.
that's really about inevitability.
I love it. I love it. So this next question, I keep on asking founders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, and intrapreneurs as well. It's very personal. So it's engagement, right? I've always thought of it as like, hey, what makes that person special? How do they like to engage? They like to break bread? They like to go to great restaurants. I had a breakfast meeting with a private equity guy, and a PEO guy for health insurance and all that type of stuff. A couple buddies of mine, and we talked about, hey, let's go to the Cubs game, right? And it's something that how we all relate to that. So my point to the question is, when people think of Josh and what you're all about, what would be ways that you would want people to think of engaging with you, right? Um, Going to a game, to an opera, to going to, I don't know, see a light show, something like that. That's what the question's about.
For me, it's really about uh, it's actually it's more about let's go for a walk. Let's go be in nature. Let's go get around trees. Not let's go hike a mountain, right? Not let's go on like a 3-day trek through like the Grand Canyon. No, but like let's go for a walk. Let's take some time to just kind of spend some time with each other where we can talk, share ideas, reflect with kind of low pressure, but spend some time. And I tend to find, that's always, I think people who know me, and that's kind of what I'm about. And where I live, where I tend to be, I want to be around trees. I want to, be, and not like out in the woods, but I want to be like, I want the woods around my house, so it's really integrated into how I operate.
Nice, nice. No, and I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's really cool to hear these answers throughout all the interviews I've had, and I used to call it employee engagement, but once we turned it into the individual, the guests, and their engagement and their style, man, you learn so many different ways. Some people love to rock climb, and like you just said, I just want to be in nature, grounded, and man, these thoughts and these vision comes out of me, and talking to someone there's a lot of connection between that. So, all right, last one is operational excellence. You ran many businesses, you've been in China, you've seen them grow, expanded. What are some of the systems and tools that you're using at Planted and Supercool to kind of optimize your operational excellence?
You know, for me, so super cool. My answer is probably not that original. I just try to get really good at using, of course, Claude, like everybody else. I try to get really good at AI, because we're a small team and we're trying to magnify, what we're doing and go a lot faster. With Planted, coming back in to really drive the marketing operations, drive the team, own our communication, make sure now as we're going in more directions, it's all really aligned. I have become more adept at really more like of the project management, which is nothing crazy, but just, when I came into the company and I work with some other companies as well, what I see is that with startups, they on the marketing communication side, sometimes it becomes problematic by virtue of their own success. And what I mean by that is when you're starting the company, especially if you're technical, you hire an agency to do your pitch deck, you hire an agency to do your PR. You got a biz dev guy talking to customers. You got a social media person who the founder's telling them what to say. You got all these messages going on, right? And there's some dilution there because sometimes you start to lose the core thing and you don't have the feedback loops where the people talking to customers are actually coming back to come and be like, well, this is what I'm hearing. Maybe we should tweak our message here. And so what I've done is when I came back into Planted, I said, okay, we're all going to meet once a week and we're going to have a single source of truth, a single document that anything related to marketing, everyone's project is on this document. And if your project is not on this document, you're not doing it. It doesn't exist because the only thing that's on here, and we're all going to have visibility and we're all going to see, and we're going to talk about it we're going to talk about it every week, only the ones that are active. Nothing's happening. We don't talk about it. Let's go down the list. Single source of truth. Everybody know what's happening. Let's manage the company really effectively and transparently. That's what we do, and that works for us.
Okay. That's fair. Look, I mean, there's some internal mechanisms that every company can adapt in their different ways, right? And you're talking about a true, right, SOP per se, and like you're planting your flag on this is the way that we operate and do things. And like you said, AI is prevalent in most businesses. If it isn't, you're falling behind very quickly. But there's also a lot of noise in there, so many different startups and things that you got to signal your way into, like, hey, what it means for Planted to use AI, or what it means for Supercool to do it as well. So awesome, Josh. What are the best ways to get a hold of you? Do you want them directed to a certain email to get a hold of you, and they're interested in kind of both areas of the businesses that you're in, or just connect with you personally on LinkedIn or something like that? What would be those best opportunities to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Personally, the best way to do is just connect with me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm certainly the most active, and you can find me there. You can find our website. You can find me through getsuper.cool. That's where we're doing our pod, our newsletter, other courses we're creating. Planted is a hipster spelling, PLANTD, materials.com. If folks want to check out the kind of insane business that we're growing on that side.
Awesome, brother. Well, hey, look, if you're not a subscriber to the channel, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Be a part of the Go for Show community. Pick up the book too, The 4A Formula, Untangle Any Challenge, and Think Like a CEO. Available on Amazon today. And look, it's always really neat to be able to open the door to some time with people. And as you saw today and listened today, hopefully throughout this whole interview, and there'll be some shorts of the wisdom that Josh has shared today. It's very inevitable that if you let your mind explore, let your mind and be in a wilderness type way, open to ideas, open to conversations, connections, great ideas and things come up, and we keep on progressing as human beings, right? So I appreciate your time, Josh.
Thank you so much, Sean. It's great to be with you.